Hi, I'm Cody Anderson, one of the pastors at Parker United Methodist Church. On Sunday, we began a new sermon series on the book of Genesis. And most of us know that the book of Genesis starts off with the creation stories that are found in Genesis 1 through 3. Creation stories are a huge part of our culture, of our world, of the way that we try to understand this life. It shouldn't be a surprise to you that we are searching for that answer. How did we come to be? How did all of the things come to be? How did we end up in this moment? So creation stories are found in all different kinds of cultures, all different religions, trying to answer this one question: how? How did we come to be? And not only that how question, but also why. Why were we created? Why was all of this created? Now, when I grew up, I heard the creation stories from this perspective of we all are born in original sin. We all are born sinful. And while I can understand some of the logic behind that it seems like we kind of drift towards sinful practices, it's always been one that I've struggled with, because if we were created and then we tend to lean towards this original sin, then what about God? What about God in our lives? As I held my newborn children, I couldn't see them as being born in original sin. Actually, what I experienced was original goodness. When we hear these words in Genesis where God creates, right? God creates light, and God creates the land and the oceans and plants and animals and people. What does God say after every time that God creates? It is good. And when God creates people, God doesn't just say it is good. He says it is very, very good. You see, I feel like we were created in original goodness. We were created for good. When God saw us, beloved children, God said, "You are very, very good." Now, that doesn't mean that we don't tip towards sinful ways, right? We all have free will. We all have this ability for us to be able to choose either goodness or that different path. And so, yes, we all have that tendency to move towards sin. But the first words that were spoken over creation, over humanity, wasn't bad, sinful, or broken. It actually was good. You were created for goodness. You know, when you buy a new cell phone, a brand new cell phone, and everything is created and works well, it's connected well, it looks great, makes life easier, but then you drop the phone and the screen gets cracked, and maybe the phone doesn't quite work the way it should have been as it was created to be. It's kind of broken. Well, you see, it was still created to work beautifully. It was still created to work good, but the brokenness came later. And that's the same with us. We were created for good. So what does that mean in this broken world? What does it mean for us when we see the brokenness that continues to happen, the sin that continues to happen? Not only the sin that causes harm to creation, to our environment, but also the sin that is created when we harm one another. We know that sin looks in a variety of different ways, right? From those little sins that maybe we commit unintentionally sometimes that hurt other people, to the big evil that we see and experience in our world. What are we supposed to do when we are confronted with sin, when we experience sin from others, or when we are causing harm? I think it's easy for us to focus on the bad, right? We all are hurting one another. We're bad, we're bad, we're bad. But what if we started focusing on how we were created for good? And we started to live that out. We started to believe that we were created for good, and we began to do good works. That when there was something that was bad happening, that we would counteract that with good. Because we were created for good. Not for out of original sin, but original goodness. What would that look like in our world? See, if we think of ourselves as created sinful, born sinful, then we lean towards that direction because it's just who we are, just who we were created to be. But if we lean into that created for goodness, where we were remembering that creation story that comes to us from Genesis 1 and 2, versus leaning into the Adam and Eve story of that's just who we are, if we are reminded that we were created for goodness, think about that, how that changes our whole world, how that changes the way that we respond, how we interact with others and creation. Think about what that might do in our communities. And then start to look for those glimpses of God's goodness in creation and in others. I think fall is a great time to begin to see that, because we're all starting to get back into our routines, into the way that we naturally are going about our days. And so it gives us an opportunity to look for the goodness, to look for those things that seem maybe out of the ordinary. So going to a grocery store and seeing somebody help somebody else load their groceries into their car, because maybe it's too heavy for them or too awkward for them, or they're wrangling kids who are screaming. Where do you see the goodness? Maybe it's somebody who stops and asks somebody if they need help, or it's somebody just simply opening a door for someone else, or it's a friend who checks in. Where are you experiencing goodness? And as you experience that goodness, the goodness that is around us, how do you respond to that? And remember that it is God who created, and God who created things that are good. And then what's one way that you can live out goodness this coming week? How might you be the good in our community, in the communities that you are part of, whether it's your neighborhood or your school or work, or just walking around, going to a restaurant or the grocery store? How can you do something that is good so that others can experience that creation of goodness? These stories that we find in Genesis are ones that we have to wrestle with sometimes. For me, that creation story is one that I've had to wrestle with. Because looking at Adam and Eve, it's easy for us to think about original sin that comes from Adam. But if we shift and we focus on those first couple of chapters in Genesis, that first creation story, we actually can see that we were created for good. Yes, we are human. Yes, we have free will, and so at times we will lean towards sinning. We will lean towards a decision that causes harm. But what if we embraced being created in goodness? And while we sin, we ask for forgiveness and we choose to work for the good. May we be a people who were created for goodness, and may we be creators of goodness in our communities and in our world. We'll see you this Sunday.